Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Kovacs here. Mishnah Yomi is in Bava Metzia, chapter 2, Mishnah 8 and 9 today. Mishnah Chet, we're continuing the theme of taking care of lost objects that you have found while waiting for the owner to come and claim them. Motzah Sfarim, if you found books, they had scrolls back then. Korei v'hen echad l'shloshim yom, you should read it once every 30 days. Im eino yodea likrot, go on, if you don't know how to read it, roll them and unroll them so they don't get dusty and moldy. Aval lo liyamod behem techila. Don't learn it if it's your first time learning this subject. The idea is sometimes there's a difficult passage, you're trying to figure it out, and you put a lot of wear and tear onto a couple pages. See that in some Gemaras sometimes. The hard parts get a little more wear that you can see from the binding. Don't let somebody else read it with you because they'll start tugging on the page or trying to turn it closer to them to read the small print. An exception to this might be people from Yemen. I met someone who grew up in Yemen. They were so extremely poor that in their school they had one book that 4 or 5 boys would share. So they, instead of tugging on it, they would actually learn to read sideways and upside down. So he could read upside down because that's the way they had learned to read in Yemen due to the abject poverty. Baruch Hashem, we have podcasts, we have books, we have Gemaras, we have everything. It's amazing. And Baruch Hashem has truly blessed us. So that may be an exception. Anyway, the Mishnah goes on. Matzah ksut, you find garments. Menorah, achad l'shloshim yom. Shake it out, air it out every 30 days. Again, so it doesn't get moldy or moth-ridden. Shochta letzurka. If you have something like a curtain or something decorative, you can spread it out for its need, for the preservation of the object itself. Avol lo lichvodo, but not to decorate your house with somebody else's object. Kli kesef, silverware, kli nechoshet, bronze, copperware, mishtamish behen litzorkan. You can use them for their needs to prevent them from getting tarnished, avalol shochkan, but not wear them out. So the Mefarshim, the Gemara explains, some kelim silver, if you use it with heat, it gets messed up. With copper, you can use it with heat, but maybe not on the fire. Kli zachav, kli zachuchit, if it's made of gold or glass, lo yiga behen, don't use them at all, achiavu Eliyahu, until Eliyahu Hanavi comes back and tells you who to give it to. Matzah sok okupa. Now the Mishnah turns to a different subject. If he found, sackcloth, which is famously very expensive and very rough on the skin, people would wear that when they're fasting and mourning, but it's usually used as a sack. That's why it's called sackcloth. It's very cheap. Okupa, a cheap container. Something that he normally wouldn't pick up at all. You don't even have to pick it up in the first place. Now we're talking about someone who is zoken ve'enu lefi kvodo. Someone's an elderly gentleman, somebody walks with a cane or a disability. You're going to make this elderly guy or woman stoop down with the cane and pick up, somebody's sack, which is worth 50 cents. You're not. And that's not just logical, it's actually the Torah in Dvarim, Deuteronomy chapter 22. It says, Lo tirei et shorachicha, you won't see the lost item of your friend, but then the passage concludes, Lo tuchol hitalem, you can't hide yourself from a lost object. So it's redundant, and our sages learn out that first part is actually not extra. There's nothing extra in the Torah. It's to teach you that somebody who it's not really worth it, and he's a dignified person, she's an elderly woman, to have her stoop down and pick up something worth 75 cents, it's what we call pasnisht. That's the technical term. So the Torah says, yes, there are occasions where you can make it as if you don't see the item, and it's just not appropriate item to return. So the Mishnah goes on, Mishnah 9, Eizahi Aveda, what is a lost item, referring to an animal? Matzah chamor apara, you found a donkey or a cow rowing b'derech, and it's grazing next to the street. Ainza aveda, that's not a lost object, because some people leave their donkey parked next to the road and they go in for a minute to the store and the donkey's just chewing on the grass. It's fine, don't start messing with it. Chamor v'chelav, a donkey with its gear, hafuchi, and they're kind of turned over, the saddle and the bags are not in the right place. Pararatza ben akromim, a cow is running through the vineyard. Now the cow could trip and get injured, or the vines themselves can be damaged. Nobody lets their cow run through a vineyard. Hareza aveda, that's definitely in the Veda. So really, it depends on the situation. The Mishnah goes on, Hechzira uvarcha, if he returned an animal and it ran away, Hechzira uvarcha, he returned it and ran away, again, Filo baracha misha ba'amim, even 4 or 5 times, Chayav l'chazira, you have to keep trying to give it back. Shenemar, Hashev tishivem, you must return it. This is an emphatic double verb. When Hebrew Ivrit repeats a verb, it's to emphasize you really need to get it done. Now, what if this process is time-consuming and he's lost a few hours of his workday? The Mishnah says, Haya botel misela. If he lost a sela, that's, I think, 4 dinar of wages, lo yamar lo, then when he gives this item back to the owner, he shouldn't tell him 10 li sela. You have to give me the full sela that I lost from wages. Elanoten lo scharu kapo botel. So he pays him like a regular laborer not doing his labor. So even though this guy might be an accountant and he's earning $100 an hour and it took him an hour, but you'd pay a regular laborer $10 an hour, so that's how much he can be reimbursed for his time from the owner of the Aveda. But there's a qualification. The Mishnah adds, Im yesham beitin, if there's a court there. Now, he doesn't have to go to the courthouse. He can get 3 men together and say, hey, you guys are my beitin. We actually do this coming up for Erev Rosh Hashanah of Yom Kippur to convene a court in Shul on those days and annul our vows, our nedarim, our shvuot, and the like. So he can form a beitin and motnei bifnei beitin and make the condition in front of him, in front of these men, that he should be reimbursed by the owner of the aveda, of the lost object, for all of his lost wages, and that's valid. Obviously, these men on the court are going to tell the owner, and obviously this is not a situation where the item being returned is going to be, lose all the value if you pay the returner for his time. Im ein shom beit, and if there's nobody else there, bifnei mit yatnei, then there's no one he can make a condition in front of that will be enforceable. Shalo kodem, his own work comes first. So if he's the accountant earning $100 an hour and it might take him an hour to return an item, but the item's only worth $10, then again, he can make it as if he doesn't see. And the Torah says, listen, shalcha kodem, you have to bring home a paycheck. You have to pay for your wife and children and tuition. So the Torah takes that into account and allows him to, let somebody else who's not working at the time go ahead and do the mitzvah of returning the object. Yashar kochachem tisku the mitzvot.